Good morning. Happy September 28th. This is the golden hour. I'm really happy to have Manny here, who is a financial wealth coach. Manny and I met a while ago, and I really liked the way that he showed up. He obviously has a great smile that you can see. And we were talking about marketing, wealth management, just taking care of yourself. And I thought this would be a great conversation to have with a lot of value in it. So Manny, why don't you take over and explain to us a little bit about what a financial life coach is and what you like to do?
Sure. Manny Apolonio, financial life coach. I've been in the financial services industry for more than 15 years. But really in this last year, what I've done is I've taken what I've learned in life coaching and melded it together with financial planning. And I think the combination of the two together makes perfect sense, right? Because money is a vehicle, money is a tool to get you to your version of a fulfilled life, whatever that means for you, right? It's just the tool. So financial planners historically like have come in to just help you with the management of, the investments and help you do a little bit of planning. The life coaching part takes it a step further and is like, okay, we're on this path, and is it ultimately going to get you closer to your version of a fulfilled life? And so, yeah, that's what I do.
Mhm.
Uh, live here in San Francisco. I've been here for 20 years. I can't believe it. I
Wow.
started, yeah, I know. I came here for undergrad and kind of never left except for a 2 year stint when I lived in Germany.
Mm. Um, that's so interesting. When you think about wealth management, financial planning, I mean, personally, I think a lot of people thought, okay, how much money can you actually save so you can stop working, right? But it sounds like what we want more than that from our lives, right? It's like, how do we want to live our lives? What are our goals in our life? People have different ways of like joy and happiness, right? So someone may want to lay on the beach and drink Mai Tais all day, and then someone may want to go learn how to surf and go to Costa Rica and travel, so sounds like part of the life and the wealth and the financial is learning about what you like, your values, how you want to live your life, not just try to save as much money as possible so you don't have to work. That's what I hear a lot.
Yes, definitely. And the values part is key, right? Because it helps us ensure we're taking the steps that are like right for us. It's a constant barometer of like, okay, does this next thing that I'm going to do align with my values? And if you have that feeling of like, oh, that doesn't feel right, it's usually because it's not expressing one of your values.
Mhm.
But to your point about it's a really different idea today what retirement looks like versus what your grandparents' retirement looked like.
Mhm.
They had pensions, they had like this guarantee that they were going to have some semblance of a cush life once
Right.
they hit retirement. Nowadays, we're not so sure, and so we have to put a little bit more thought into funding our own retirements.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, it's not just about the retirement part. It's like, what are we doing right now to make our everyday one that we're living in like financial wellness, where you're not afraid of looking at your statements and you're not in avoidance around your finances.
Why do you think people are afraid to look at their finances or putting in an avoidance like, oh, retirement's way far away. I don't need to do anything. Why do you think people are so paralyzed around the conversation or yeah.
Sure. Yeah. A lot of it is kind of predetermined. Like in your childhood, you picked up your ideas around money from the people around you. Sorry, I'm in a working office, so people are like talking.
No problem.
That's all right.
My dog might
So
bark.
that's all right. So yeah, so we're all programmed with these scripts in our mind from the people that raised us. So we're getting messages every day telling us how we should be saving, what we should be spending money on, where we should be working, all these things. And um, yeah, I guess people are avoidant when they're not ready to face the truth, right? They're not ready to make a change. And it takes a small step in the right direction to get over that. But yeah, I mean, think of anything new that you've tried.
Right.
At first, it was scary, right?
Right.
So,
Well, I remember like when I first started my business 20 years ago or whatever, I can't believe it's that long. And I remember I used to be scared to do my taxes, right? Because it
mm,
was for the business, right? So I was contracting, working for different agencies, and I would just avoid it, right? And then at the end of the year, or whatever, they'd be like, you owe 10 grand. And then that perpetuated my fear around doing taxes because I knew that if I did it, I was going to have to pay 10 grand, but my little small brain at the time, very young and naive, didn't know, hey, if you take care of this now, you won't have that 10 grand that you owe one day at the end of the year. And so it's an interesting concept around money and planning, right? And now it feels so good because I have a bookkeeper and I do the estimated taxes. And so by the time taxes come around, they're done and and it's easy, right? And so I feel like that's kind of the same thing that can happen with retirement or planning for your future. I feel like a lot of young people are intimidated. Like I still hear people go, yeah, I don't know what we're doing with our retirement. Like we're just trying to make it through daily life. And I think that's part of it too. A lot of people come from scarcity. They're like, I can't even make my bills, or I'm just
mm.
trying to pay my insurance, or what would you say to someone that was like, I don't even know if I can pay for retirement because I can't even pay for my life or whatever? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Um,
Yeah.
yes, I know exactly what you're saying. And part of it is as much as possible, just automating a savings program. Like I work with millionaires and some of them are really lucky, some of them have inherited it, but the ones that earned their wealth did so over a long period of time systematically. And one of the easiest ways to do that for most folks is like a 401k. And why the 401k is so popular and why it works so well is because it's happening behind the scenes before that money even hits your paycheck. It's already in an account that is participating in the stock market. And like the whole point of saving money, at least the way I see it, the whole point of saving money and like being frugal, and but that by the way is not like my philosophy. I have a different philosophy on like how you should spend in the current moment, which is like take care of your needs and take care of some of your wants, but always have this plan in the background that's helping you get towards retirement.
Right. Cause like when I watch videos on like how to save money, they're like, cut out your Starbucks. $10, $10, whatever, $7 a day equals retirement. And I'm like, cutting out Starbucks doesn't seem like a great strategy, you
It's
know?
definitely it's it's I get what they're trying to do, which is
Yeah.
trying to get you to look more closely at your spending. And like that's one of the first things I do with my clients is I'm like, okay, we're gonna look at 3 months worth of credit card and bank statements together. And they're
Mm.
like, what? Like, and the whole point of that exercise is to show them in real numbers, like this is what you value currently. And is it in alignment? Because this is where your money is going. So that's one of the exercises. But I don't think that skipping that latte every day is what's gonna get you to a millionaire status.
Right.
Sure. Like if you have like a more frugal outlook, you have more to save. But I think it's these bigger pieces,
Mhm.
right? Like what are you doing today to help increase your earning potential? Right? That's a big step.
Mhm.
And also yeah, that's part of it.
I like that because that's definitely like I've never heard someone in your position say, let me see. usually the conversations, what kind of debt are you in? What kind of loans do you have? Never like, what are your spending habits? So that's kind of where the life coaching or that different approach is that you're coming, because you're not just asking and then asking about what's your earning potential, what are you doing, what are some of the things. I think that's really fascinating. Um,
Yeah,
okay.
I think a lot of
Yeah.
planners get really stuck on this like net worth
Yeah.
part where all that matters is how much you have saved. And
Right.
that's not really how I see it. I see it's like, okay, are you living in scarcity, like you mentioned earlier, or do you feel like you're living in abundance? Do you feel like you have enough? And the spending kind of shows me how they got into debt. The spending kind of explains uh, a spending style or a story that they're telling themselves. And it's really fascinating because I love like I'm really curious about people and like their psychology around money. That's like I could read about that all day.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very interesting. So we were originally talking about marketing and online, and I know that you have a lot of YouTube videos. What are some of the ways that you think you're marketing yourself? Like, how are you getting in touch with people? Because and we'll get to this in a second, but what's interesting is you're a millennial. The way that you market is very different than your predecessors, which there's no good or bad or wrong. It's just different. So what do you think? How are you marketing yourself that's unique right now? That's different, I guess, than most people in your position.
Sure. Yeah, I'm investing a lot of my time and energy in producing these YouTube videos. And the
Okay.
reason why I do that is I think that my personality comes through in those videos. And financial planning, financial life coaching is a good part of that is whether or not you want to even take advice from a person and if this is someone you think you can learn from. So personality and all of that kind of is really important. And
Right.
video I found has been the most effective way to kind of showcase that.
Mhm.
Um, Also, I am under this belief that it takes about like 6 times to
Mhm.
really meet someone to
Mhm.
get to know them enough that you trust them.
Yeah.
And if I have a video out there that someone is looking at 11 p.m. at night,
Right.
that's and they're looking at it for maybe 10 minutes, that's 10 minutes of FaceTime with that person. And I think that counts towards those 6 impressions before you've gotten someone's trust.
Yeah. The trust is a key factor. Because when I hear people, financial planners, wealth managers, whatever you want to call it, they say stuff like, I'm looking for ultra high net worth individual. I'm looking for people with over $1 million in their bank account. That doesn't seem very warm to me. Like that kind of ask doesn't seem, I don't know, authentic. I don't know.
Yeah,
Like,
no. And it's like it's already a barrier to entry and like that's not our office definitely has minimums,
right.
right? And that's why I started the coaching process. The
Yeah.
coaching allows people who fall under that threshold
Mm-hmm.
an opportunity to access financial planning advice over like a set period of sessions. But but yes, I hear that all the time where people are like, "Oh, what's your minimum?" or all of that. And I'm like, "Okay, wait. I think if you really want to be effective, it's like, how are you going to help get this person closer to their fulfilled life? Ultimately, that's why the money is important because it helps you get there, right? So, what are the steps you're taking to help them even maybe like articulate
Mm-hmm.
what it is that is going to make them happy? That maybe they've never even had that opportunity, but that's where I think it's different for me because of this philosophy. And sure, like our bread and butter is managing assets for clients. And I think eventually, I think two things will happen. I think if I continue to just do good and put out information out there that is helpful and authentic,
Mhm.
those people will be attracted by my marketing to reach out to me. And so it's a much warmer lead. They've actually pre-qualified themselves
Mhm.
and they've already know my philosophy around money and they jive with it. And they're like, all right, I like that vibe.
Mhm.
I want him to be my planner.
Mhm. Yeah, it seems kind of like we were talking about sales as a way to help people, right? A lot of people look at sales as a dirty word, but I actually look at it as a way to help people because I know I'm providing a great product. So if you hire me, I know you're not going to get screwed over in SEO or whatever. So if we're looking at sales as helpful, you're telling a better story. I think it's more authentic because when we're marketing, we're talking about the outcome. We're not talking about the thing. Nobody cares about keywords, schema markup, CSS, WordPress. What we're talking about is sharing the client's values online so they create trust. And that comes from keyword research, content writing. And so we're sharing the outcome of the marketing, which is clients that understand your values. What you're talking about is really what the client wants, which is to create a life that they love, not to save a crap load of money to have it, right? And so I think you're telling a story that's different than other people in your field, which is amazing, right? And I would be interested in knowing, like, when other people hear, like other people in your industry, Manny, financial advisors, wealth managers, when they hear you tell that story, do they like roll their eyes or go, oh crap, I need to do that? Like, have you noticed that? Not that it
Yeah,
matters what other people do, right?
yeah, there's many different ways to approach a problem, right?
Mhm.
Or approach an opportunity. And my approach, I think, is the kinder, gentler way. And I think if you really want to get people to make effective change in their life, you've got to come
Mhm.
from that ethos, because I could have you in the office, we could look at your spending style, and I could shame you. Is that an effective way to motivate you? Probably not. But if I get you jazzed up about what your life looks like 5, 10 years from now, I think everybody is resourceful and whole and will and knows the best, like, path for them. My job is to, like, ask the right questions and guide along the way. Of course, there's like best practices and everything, but I think, yeah, being kind of like this guide towards fulfillment in their financial life or life in general is part of my goal.
Mhm.
And I think with automation, with AI, with machine learning, computers can do the investing part better than humans.
Mhm.
And I think it'll get better.
Mhm.
Okay. So,
Mhm.
how do I differentiate
Mhm.
from that?
Mhm.
Are you, are my clients, are the people that I'm trying to reach out to, like, does the AI understand why it's important to you to save for your daughter's college fund?
Mhm.
Maybe eventually you'll understand that. Or, or does the AI understand, like, the sensitivities around talking about a family trust?
Mhm.
These are the nuances that I think humans bring to the table. And my strategy against all of this new technology is just to be more human.
Mhm. Yeah, I agree. Right. And that makes it not a commodity, right? So if you wanted to, if you didn't want the advice of a professional, there's all these online, portals that you can just be like, here's $1,000 and put it in there or whatever. But if you're looking for more of a strategy, a personalized strategy, then you need a human, right? I guess we're also talking about driving our actions to bring in the right kind of clients that we want, right? You want a partner that you can help over time, where you can adjust the strategy based on their life goals, and not someone that just wants to, like, sit behind a computer and play the game, right?
Correct. Yeah, I want people who will take the advice, right?
Yeah.
And people who are open and willing to look at things in different ways and look at different possibilities. I had a client, for example, who's like, I don't get really that excited. He's a millennial. He's like, I don't really get that excited about saving for a house. And I'm like, all
Right.
right, well, like, what do you like to do for fun? He's like, oh, I like to go on all these adventures and things like that. And I'm like, uh, oh yeah, you told me about that trip you took, like, in a van or whatever. And he's like, yeah, I would like to do more of that. That would bring me happiness. So it's not retirement or saving for a house. It's how do we get him to a place where he can take off work for a year, right? That was right. And that's what's important about financial planning for him is like, okay, how do I take this really great income that I have from some tech company, turn it into lasting wealth so I can do more of the things that I want?
Mhm.
That's that's like the human part, right? Like the calculator is like gonna say, nope, you got to work from this day until age 67 and you've got to save this much. And it's sure that's one way, but there's also like life now that you want to live as well. And how do you balance them?
Mhm. Yeah. I mean, that's an interesting thing, right? So when we're talking about business and my colleagues that run businesses too, talk about managing people, right? And one of my colleagues that I met, she said, I pay this guy top cash for this position. I don't know why they're not doing their job. Why aren't they doing it? I pay them more than anybody else. And I've been lucky enough to do some research and have some chats around management, and it's about values, right? So like what you just said, this person's values aren't making a crap ton of money. It's taking a day off, one day a week, being able to travel, stuff like that. So if we're talking about managing, you have to manage to a person's values, right? When you're working
Mhm.
with them, you have to invest to their values, right? Because he doesn't want, your client doesn't want a house. So what's going to make them safe in their retirement or make them happy now on the way to retirement? So I think that's really to get to know them, right? I wonder how many financial planners, wealth advisors actually know what make people tick outside of, I want to save for my kid to go to college. I want to pay off my house. I want to have money to redo my kitchen. I want to pay for my parents, whatever, right? Those are like old school, wonderful things.
Yeah, totally. And I mean, yeah, so people are like, here's an example. Someone says, I want to remodel my kitchen or I want to remodel my living room. And I think a regular financial planner would be like, okay, great. How much do you need? When do you need it by? Right. And I go further and I go, what will happen when you,
Mhm,
what, like, what do you imagine life will be like after the remodel?
mhm,
And then they say, well, we've been wanting to host Christmas at our house, but we haven't really been able to because our family has grown. So we always do it at someone else's house. And I really would like to have that experience here in my home. And so right then and there, I'm looking at someone who holds family in as a high value, right? So how does that translate into financial planning? It's like I can help them adjust. It's like, okay, we can do the remodel now. And like that sounds really important to you. It might mean that you have to work another year. Is that okay? So we make adjustments with that information.
right.
And but we speak to their values, just like you were
Yeah.
saying.
Yeah. Yeah. That's the key, right? You don't want anybody to do anything that they don't want to do. And if they do it, they're not going to make it a habit and they're not going to do it for a long time. So if they're taking out 3 grand, 4 grand a month or whatever to put into their, one of their retirement accounts and they don't like it, they're probably going to stop doing it at some point. So it's not really an answer.
Yeah. Sustainable change is what I'm after.
Mm,
And usually that requires like a perspective shift
mhm.
and a realignment of like a person's values. And I think maybe every financial planner has their version of this. I think I'm just a little bit more explicit about it because of my life coaching background.
Yeah, yeah. Um, so the other question that we were talking about was how do you think that your industry has changed from your predecessors? Like, I know you're talking a lot more about your life coaching approach to it, but in general, I know that like in marketing, when I graduated school, we were doing annual reports, and now we're doing, schema markup and content and websites. There's been a big change in marketing. Like, what kind of changes have you seen that you've noticed over time?
Sure. I, so computers and the internet have made everything accessible to anybody, anywhere, when they want it, right? And so uh, an investor doesn't have to hire an advisor to invest in the stock market. In the 80s, you had to. You needed that middleman, you needed that help to get access to the market. Nowadays, you can be trading all day on your own. Okay. Also, uh, information was really siloed back then. You couldn't just like look up like how well is Microsoft doing this quarter? How well is Microsoft compared to Apple this quarter? You couldn't do that. You couldn't do that before. So you relied on your broker to do that. Also, when someone is like, oh, you need a lawyer? Here's their contact info. Give them a ring, and so you just had blind faith that the person's going to be a good match for you. And you picked up the phone and you had a conversation. And maybe you had like several other conversations as you vetted other attorneys, but the process was like way more drawn out. I think now, because of the internet, and like my example, like someone could be scrolling in their bed with the covers, looking at different advisors, and they can pick and choose who they want to work with. So, so how do you stand out? How do I stand out in the crowd? I gotta, I have to give people an opportunity to even like get to know me. And that's like the whole point of the YouTube and social media.
What's your YouTube handle or URL, or do you know it offhand?
Yeah. Um, Weird Money. And the show is the weirdness of money, because I believe that we all carry a little bit of weirdness around our own money. And I kind of speak to that. So
Yeah,
Weird Money.
I'll put that in the link. That's awesome. And so you do YouTube, you do Google reviews, you do, I think
Yeah,
you do all the online things as opposed to maybe someone that's at another big place that I won't name that is very limited. We spoke about this previously, which is the bigger investment houses have a lot of like, what is it? Edits. You can't do this. You can't have your own website. You can't do this. Can
yeah, yeah.
you talk a little
There's
bit
a
about that?
For the safety of the consumer and investor, the Securities and Exchange Commission has created a long list of rules and regulations on how we are allowed to market. And that's actually really good, right? Because if you have a person out there saying, I can get you 20% per year every year until you retire, and not have like a basis for that claim, uh, they're going to get a lot of interest, but are they going to be able to deliver? So I get why they're there, right? And it can be really restrictive, especially for those who work for big firms. Um, so the beauty of like the way we're set up is we're a registered investment advisory firm. So we're our own boutique operation. We use Charles Schwab to custody, like to like have the client's money parked over there, but we get to decide for ourselves how we want to market. But yeah, you're right. Like a lot of these big firms are really, they don't want to take on the risk of uh, audit from the SEC, so they just don't take any chances.
So you're like, so I hear other people say, I'm not going to make videos. I'm not going to do reviews because of the SEC. And you're like, I'm doing it. So like, are you like just more clear on the rules and regulations, or are they hiding behind exposure? Why do you
No,
think that
yeah. So yes, I've read through the rules and regulations. I am part of different online forums where we talk about like, okay, like in your practice, how do you interpret these rules, and what have you seen that works? And um, that has given me comfort knowing that other folks are trying different things, right? The regulations haven't caught up with where we are with technology. I think you see that across the board anyway, but you see it also in the financial world. Um, Chances are, before you buy anything today, you're going to read a review first. And our industry is not immune from that trend. And whether you like it or not, someone has shared about their experience with you. And part of the marketing is just helping to control the narrative that I want people to actually see.
I think that is a great point with just controlling the narrative, because there's things that are being said about you, and there are things about you online no matter what. So whether or not you're participating or not, it's on there, right? So no strategy is just a really bad online strategy, right? And so I still hear, people say sometimes, oh, I'm an old school financial planner. My clients wouldn't want me to make videos online. They don't want a fancy website. They just want me. What would you say to that?
Sure. And I would say, okay, great. Like, are you running a lifestyle practice where you just have enough clients so you can make the kind of income you want? Then fine. You don't need to have a growth practice. But if you are running a practice where you need growth, your website is not for the clients you already have. It's for those people who need to learn about who you are. One of the strategies that's worked really well for my predecessors is networking with other allied professionals, so accountants and attorneys. Those people know how to do due diligence. So they're going to look you up first.
Right.
And is the story you're telling about yourself um, showing the best side of you? That's how I see all of this networking, all of this marketing working together. So the old school way of word of mouth marketing, that's one of my strategies, but it's coupled with so much more to make that due diligence process that a client or a referral partner goes through. Um, it gives them more to go off of versus like a really sparsely filled out LinkedIn profile and no web presence at all. There's something about like social validation when other people like what you say, find your advice useful. Um, th- like we're in the, you know more than I do, but we're like in this the world of the influencer, right? And like some I heard from an actor friend, he said, they asked me how many followers I have as like part of whether or not I'll get the job. If they don't have a huge budget for marketing, if I can bring a following, that helps tremendously. And I'm not trying to get to an actor status, and I'm not trying to have like a lot of followers. That's not the most effective way for me to actually make business happen. It's more just being able to articulate conveniently for my viewer when it's convenient for them, like my value and how I work.
I wrote down two things that I loved what you said, word of mouth marketing, right? So if you're not in, and then the other thing I wrote down is, what is it? You said growth practice. If you're not into a growth
You've got a lifestyle practice or a growth
lifestyle practice.
practice.
If you have a lifestyle practice and you're not trying to grow it, then don't market. right? And word of mouth is like old school essential. So now you got to do that plus the online stuff if you want
Yes.
growth practice. Interesting. I'm also noodling over in my mind about how technology and marketing and business has evolved. So has decision making evolved, right? So back in the day, maybe you worked at IBM for 50 years and your friend that was a CPA said, call this lawyer guy, he's going to do your divorce. And you would do it, right? Because
Hmm.
that's what people did. Now, four people give you a suggestion. You go to all their websites, you look at all their stuff, you read their reviews, you see if you gel personally, you gel with them, and then you make a decision maybe with 5 touch points. So as people evolve, so has the way that they make choices, right? I mean,
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I do it too.
yeah,
When I was looking for a dentist, when I was looking for a place to have someone change my tire,
yeah,
I looked at the reviews, and sure, there are some bad actors out there who just want to make life hard for some people. So I give it some weight. I don't give it all the weight, but like the rest of the story, like
mhm,
what I read about them, if they seem knowledgeable, like that helps me form a better decision.
right. I was looking for a vet for my dog and I was like, I want to use somebody local. So I just, called the guy that was near me, and I don't want to name names because this is recorded, because I thought the office looked cute. But then I just got online to search, right? And I looked on Yelp, and this vet had like maybe 25 bad reviews. Like, she's mean. She wasn't nice to my dog. Da, da, da. And so I had already kind of started the conversation, and I called back and I said, I'm not bringing my dog in there. Like, no way, and whether or not this vet is like amazing or not, Yelp said in 20 reviews that you're not. And so I'm not bringing my baby there. So I don't think he or she manages their online and believes in it, right? So I hear that a lot. I don't believe in the online thing, but she just lost business
Yeah.
because,
Yeah.
that's a real world example of not managing your online reputation.
Yeah. I see examples of it too in my industry. And um,
Mhm.
there are folks who are like, I don't need to, right? They were able to build their practice well before this new the I'll say it, like, a very informed consumer. We have like, isn't like the millennial generation and Gen Z like the most educated?
Yeah.
They know how to do the research, right? So they're going to look first before they make the leap to hire you.
Well, and that goes back to values too. So one of the conversations I'm always having is it's awesome that you went to Harvard Law. It's awesome that you went to Stanford, but some people aren't making a decision on whether or not they're going to hire you based on the college that you went to, right? So like what kind of person are you? What's your life experience? That's changed too. It's not just Harvard, although those are nice things. So
Yeah, I think people want to see like a well-rounded person. Like, w-
yeah,
I think, yeah, like if they're looking at your LinkedIn profile, they're looking at your bio on your
yeah.
website, and then they see you post a little bit in somewhere else, that that gives them like a degree of comfort.
Right. There's a certain amount of transparency that has to take place when you do online stuff, right? Like you have to expose yourself and that allows people to connect. So I look at all these things that you're doing, you're telling a great story, which it helps the client. Plus you're telling them who you are upfront. So it's just closing the sale quicker from a business perspective, but also just getting to know them faster. And what business owner doesn't want to help more people faster, right? Sure,
Yes,
the
absolutely.
word of mouth thing is going to work, but may take a little bit longer. So we like to do all of the things, not put all your,
Correct. Yeah. It
yeah,
doesn't have to replace word of mouth marketing. And yeah, for the most part, like attorneys and CPAs and tax preparers continue to be great referral partners. But what are they going to send when they send that email that connects me to the person looking for my services? They're going
right,
to send my link, and that's where the person's going to go first.
right. I was talking to someone the other day. I can't remember what they did, but I said, so what makes you different than all the people that do what you do? And they responded, they're like, nothing really. That was
Oh
like,
no.
okay, yeah, cool, awesome. Usually someone makes up something like, they say the same things. We're really responsive. We've been in business for 30 years. We do have a personal touch.
Oh
You
gosh,
call
all
me
of that is
anytime.
given. You have to have that. That has, if you're running a successful business, like that is the bare minimum, right?
I think so, right? Those are expectations out of the gate. I also, and we're going to wrap it up in a minute, but I also think people, if we're going to fear, I think people are scared to have an opinion sometimes about you're taking a very approachable position towards, financial planning. Some people don't want to like expose themselves or take an opinion. They think that being kind of generic is better. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, totally. Yes. So, yeah, yeah, we talk about like a niche, ironically, once you've identified a niche, it actually opens up more possibility because people get to know who you are and like what you've specialized in. So if I say I am really great with young families and young families with high earners, right? If that's my specialization, but I have a pre-retiree who's solo, it doesn't necessarily turn them off. They just know that that's like where my focus is.
Mhm. Yeah, the niche can be very powerful. We always say if
Yeah.
you're speaking to everyone, you're speaking to no one. But I also admire in you, Manny, too, that you're sharing part of your humanity, right? And that's where people can connect as well. So not just identifying you working with young families and not ultra high net worth individuals, but you're also sharing who you are. And I think that's a powerful thing that not a lot of people do. They're it's just business. I'm just the guy that does the thing. I'm not going to share about my viewpoints on life.
Yeah, I think people are really hungry for connection. And I think that's why the life coaching piece is so successful. Um, and it's not therapy.
Right.
And but it's not, and it's close to uh counseling. But it's like a great mix of all of it. But that's like what people I think are really hungry for, and I think that's the part of the market we're trying to satisfy. And if I have an ultra high net worth young family, that's great too.
Right. Yeah, I mean, just because you're ultra high net worth doesn't mean you're a mean person, right? Like you shouldn't be treated with generosity and kindness or whatever,
Yeah, just like I can't make a prejudgment on someone who is coming under our $1 million minimum. Like I can't make a judgment of over someone who has $10 million, right? Like that's not fair. I just allow them to show up and then allow the process to kind of dictate whether or not it makes sense that I'm their advisor.
Yeah. Human conversation, right? You're a human if you have 10 million versus a half a million, you're still like putting on your pants one leg at a time.
Right.
Maybe. Well, I think that was really interesting perspectives. I guess we're gonna wrap it up here, Manny. But if there was like one thing that you could share with people that makes you different or that they should know about their financial destiny, that you hear a lot, what would that one kind of nugget be? I'd love to hear what.
Sure. There is a story you are telling yourself about your money that resides in your mind unconsciously. And it's your job to figure out what that story is and to figure out if it's real. And if you're experiencing financial struggles or difficulties, think about what that story that you're telling yourself is. Everyone has one of those.
Mm. I love that, Manny. Figure out what everybody's got a story, figure out what it is, and is that story working for you? And if it's not, then maybe you should change it.
Precisely.
Yeah. Well, great. Thank you so much for chatting with me today, Manny. It was really fun. I'm so glad that we met, and I am gonna look forward to seeing you again. So thanks so much.
Thank you.